The wind howls across the frozen estate, biting into everyone's skin. On a day meant for warm tea and fireside comforts, a crowd has gathered outside the winter mansion instead. But they aren't here for hospitality. They are here for the spectacle. The sickening crack of a whip echoes through the courtyard as a servant is brutally punished by his master. The onlookers point their fingers, their laughter mixing with the cold air. They have long despised this boy, hating how he strutted around as if he were the favorite pet of the house. But the truth is far crueler. He was never a favorite, merely a toy to be discarded. Evelyn Winter, the cold-hearted mistress, finally lowers her arm, done with the beating. She lets the whip fall to the snow, her voice icy as she commands him never to speak to her again, but the foolish boy refuses to accept his fate. Desperation claws at his heart as he clings to the hem of her dress. He begs for an explanation, reminding her of their whispered promises and the love he thought they shared. The shock on his face is palpable when the woman simply throws her head back and laughs. She mocks him, calling him a naive fool for believing in such convenient lies. Perhaps she found him amusing once, but she has no need for broken things. Now, he is nothing more than filth, daring to cling to her pristine existence. Her eyes gleam with malice as she delivers her final warning. Remember your lowly station and stay out of her sight forever. 10 years have vanished since that blood-stained day. Our female lead has ascended to become the iron-fisted head of the Winter family. But inside her castle, trouble is brewing as a man and his lover whisper complaints about her tyranny. They attempt to steal a moment of passion, but the maid is trembling with terror. She knows that if Evelyn Winter catches them, there will be no mercy. The mistress of the house is infamous for her wicked, ruthless soul. The man, however, is unbothered by the danger, oddly commanding the maid to turn around. The girl assumes it is some strange fetish, but the twisted truth is far worse. He cannot bear to look at her face while he holds her. He only desires her back and her golden hair because they mimic Evelyn Winter. Even as he embraces the maid, his eyes are fixated on Evelyn's portrait, swearing that he will conquer the Ice Queen one day. But tragically for him, he is living in a delusion. That day will never come. The heavy doors burst open, and Evelyn Winter strides in like a goddess of war. Fury radiates from her as she stares down the disgusting pair, ordering them thrown out into the blizzard immediately. However, even a devil has her moments of grace. She offers them a choice, a final act of twisted generosity. They can either freeze to death in the unforgiving snow or take her pistol and end their own lives instantly. Naturally, the cowards have no desire to die today. They fall to their knees, begging for mercy. The man, in a pathetic attempt at dominance, tries to threaten her assistant, Isaac, only to be kicked aside like a stray dog. Evelyn sighs, exhausted by their pathetic noise. Since they care so much about her honor, she decides they should die to restore the glory of the Winter House. She even sweetly promises to commission a golden coffin for their corpses. Truly, what a thoughtful executioner. The lady raises her gun, the cold steel gleaming. Terror finally overtakes the lovers, and they scramble to flee. This psycho isn't bluffing. She really intends to kill them. As they retreat, they scream curses back at her. They vow that her reign is ending, and her family name won't shield her from karma for much longer. Evelyn pulls the trigger, but the bullet misses by an inch, allowing the rats to scurry away. She clicks her tongue, disappointed in her aim. Turning to Isaac, she commands that the company must pivot its focus to weapons production. She was scheduled to leave the castle, but nature has other plans. The sea is frozen solid. She instructs Isaac to compensate the workers with extra coins for the delay. Just then, the door creaks open, and a miniature angel steps into the room. It is a stark contrast to the violence moments ago. This adorable little girl is Evelyn's daughter, Sherry. The ice around Evelyn's heart melts instantly. She scoops up her child, apologizing for the commotion, explaining that she was just chasing away a big, bad wolf. As she moves, it becomes clear our female lead suffers from a leg injury. The maid urges her to use her cane, but Evelyn stubbornly refuses to show weakness. Sherry has come to share a treasure, a drawing of a flower. This specific bloom doesn't grow in the frozen north, but Evelyn's eyes widen in recognition. The drawing drags a memory from the depths of her mind. It reminds her of a shy servant boy from years ago. In the flashback, it was his first time traveling away from her. Instead of resting, he spent the entire trip carving a wooden flower. terrified she might reject his humble gift. To his astonishment, Evelyn had called it pretty, though she lamented it had no scent. The boy, beaming with hope, promised to bring her real flowers one day. But that promise withered on the vine. The last time they met, he was beaten bloody and chased from her life. Evelyn shakes her head, desperate to bury those ghosts. She sternly warns her daughter never to draw that flower again. She turns to leave, but the peace is shattered as the man bursts into the hall. It is a messenger for the Winter family, his face pale with dread. He brings news that could shatter their empire. Gasping for air, he struggles to speak. The Winter family is not just in trouble, they are facing a catastrophe. Reports are flooding in. All their merchant ships in the north have been intercepted and their valuable cargo seized. But the nightmare doesn't end there. Every single ship they own across the entire empire has been stopped. This isn't a coincidence. The military is launching a targeted attack. The scene shifts to the courtyard, where an ironclad military carriage grinds to a halt. A man steps out, his presence so commanding that every soldier instantly salutes. He radiates the aura of a high-ranking officer. Upstairs, our female lead is completely unaware that the wolves are already at her door. Evelyn is seething with indignation. She demands to know who gave the order to touch her property. Certain she has committed no crime against the state, her servant trembles as he reveals the name of their tormentor. The operation is led by the Empire's greatest war hero, Colonel Gallus Black. The name falls flat. Our female lead has no idea who this man is or why a war hero would have a vendetta against her family. But then, the servant delivers the killing blow. The Winter family is being charged with high treason, accused of selling weapons to the enemy. The warning comes too late. She is told to beware the colonel, a man whose reputation is painted in blood and fear. They say he isn't just a soldier, he is a living devil. And now, that very devil stands at the gates. Gillis has arrived to pay his respects to Evelyn. But this is no polite social call. It is a reckoning. Chaos erupts as his troops storm the mansion. Servants freeze at gunpoint, trembling in fear. Amidst the panic, the commander saunters in with terrifying calm. His mockery is sharp. He offers a hollow apology for tracking mud onto her pristine floors, claiming the urgency of war left him no time to wipe his boots. Every word is a calculated strike at Evelyn. When their eyes finally lock, the chilling truth hits her. 10 years ago, she beat a lowly servant half to death and branded him as filth. That day, broken and bleeding, he swore a blood oath. He promised she would rue that moment for every second of her remaining life. She had laughed off the threat of a mere servant, a fatal mistake. The boy she once trampled has risen from the ashes to become the Empire's deadliest weapon. Steel clatters against marble as the soldiers herd everyone into the grand hall. The air in the Winter mansion grows heavy with dread. The decree is read aloud, shattering the peace. The prestigious Winter family is now under official investigation. The charges are grave. They are accused of opening secret sea routes and smuggling military-grade weapons to enemy nations. Suspicion casts a wide net. Every soul within the Duke's estate is a suspect. No one leaves until the soldiers drag the truth into the light. To step outside is to commit treason. Panic grips the staff, their murmurs rising into a fearful din, until Evelyn steps forward to command the room. Her voice cuts through the fear. She warns them that every breath is being scrutinized. One careless slip could bring the entire Winter legacy crashing down. She ascends the stairs, but a gaze heavy with malice follows her. Watching from the shadows above is the nightmare himself, Gillis Black. This tale unfolds in the Altric Empire, a land teetering on the brink of ruin. Enemies encircle the nation like wolves waiting for a wounded deer. Only the sheer brute force of its military keeps the empire from crumbling into dust. Yet, skirmishes bleed the borders dry. In every clash, it is the common folk who suffer first, their lives extinguished like candles in the wind. Resentment brewed among the masses, turning against the opulent nobility. The rigid walls of social class began to fracture under the pressure. Amidst the despair, a legend was born. His origins were a mystery, but his name echoed across the battlefields. Gillis Black. They christened him the Black Beast, a demon of war. To him, the battlefield was merely a chessboard, and checkmate was inevitable. He fought not for the crown, but for the vengeance of the downtrodden. Gillis became the beacon of hope for the common people. His low birth no longer mattered. Blood and victory had crowned him the greatest war hero of the age. Back in the present, this legend corners Evelyn. He demands to know her husband's whereabouts. But Evelyn is not amused by his interrogation. With ice in her veins, she calls the Empire's supreme commander an idiot. She mocks him, wondering how an illiterate brute ever rose to the rank of hero. She suggests he retire and write fiction, given his talent for making things up. His subordinates watch in stunned silence as their terrifying leader is openly insulted. But Gillis sees through the venom. He knows exactly which nerve he has struck. Records state that Rowan Winter is dead and buried. The world believes it, but the commander's instincts scream otherwise. His suspicion drove him to the unthinkable. He ordered his men to desecrate the sanctity of death and exhume the grave. Evelyn freezes in horror. They actually dug up her husband's resting place. Gillis offers a smirk that passes for an apology, though remorse is nowhere to be found in his eyes. However, the desecration yielded a shocking truth. The coffin was empty. The timeline unravels. Evelyn married Rowan 10 years ago. 3 years later, a train accident supposedly claimed his life, yet the earth holds no bones. Rowan Winter is gone. Gillis tosses a stack of documents onto the table, the evidence damning. He has dissected the family finances. Vast fortunes have vanished into thin air over the last 7 years. A missing corpse and missing gold. The conclusion is inescapable. Rowan Winter faked his death and is funding a rebellion from the shadows. Evelyn bursts into laughter. She dismisses his theory as pure fantasy, doubling down on her insult that he belongs in a storybook, not on the battlefield. Gillis ignores the jab and pivots. He demands to know why a woman of her status has remained a widow for 7 long years. She had ample time and countless suitors. Evelyn admits this is true, but claims her heart remains bound to her late husband. Even in death, Rowan owns her heart, and she refuses to replace him. Now, it is the commander's turn to laugh. He finds it hilarious that a cold-blooded witch like Evelyn could speak of love. But Evelyn's patience has snapped. She rises and splashes her wine directly into his face with burning eyes. She declares that his intimidation tactics mean nothing to her. He can surround her home with armies, but without solid proof, he is powerless against her. She hisses a final warning never to slander her husband's name again and storms out. In the hallway, she finds her daughter waiting. She reaches for the child, but the little angel trembles in terror. It isn't her mother she fears, but the dark shadow looming behind her. Gillis is not finished yet. Evelyn tries to ignore him, but the commander forces the words into the air. She believes she is safe, but he whispers a devastating truth. The evidence isn't just real, it is a tidal wave that will drown her entire family. When the Imperial military seized a ship smuggling arms to enemy nations, a shocking truth came to light. The contraband weapons bore the unmistakable seal of the Winter family. The stakes are life and death. Unless she can prove her innocence immediately, she must prepare to face the guillotine for treason. Evelyn dismisses the news as a mere intimidation tactic. With cold eyes, she reminds him of the pathetic boy he once was, the one who used to weep and beg for his life at her feet. She sneers, telling him that if he grovels on the floor like he did in the past, she might deign to give him an answer. But when she swings her cane to strike him, Gillis catches the weapon effortlessly. His voice drops to a low warning. For the sake of the young child she still has to protect, he advises her to watch her step. Then, in a move that leaves her stunned, he embraces her. He postpones the investigation until tomorrow so she can rest. Evelyn is left frozen in confusion. What game is this man playing? But her confusion quickly boils into rage. She should have known better than to trust a viper like him. That devilish man, he hurled her walking cane to the bottom of the staircase, leaving her stranded. But to understand this animosity, we must look back at the legacy of the Winter family. The first Duke of Winter was the Emperor's right hand, a legendary figure who helped forge the Empire itself through blood and loyalty. In gratitude, the king bestowed upon him the vast northern lands. A brilliant strategist, the first Duke amassed a fortune through mining and the trade of military supplies. However, glory is fleeting. His descendants grew intoxicated by greed, turning to the black market and illegal dealings to swell their coffers. The common people, crushed under their tyranny, grew weary. Whispers of rebellion began to spread like wildfire. Hope flickered briefly when the last Duke, Rowan Winter, rose to power. He was a prodigy who became the youngest person in history to graduate from the academy. Though he was the top scholar, a dark secret lingered. He was merely an adopted son. Then, 3 years later, he vanished without a trace. His wife, Evelyn Winter, ascended to the ducal seat, but she was no savior. She was a tyrant cut from the same cloth as her predecessors. She didn't even shed a tear for her husband's death. Instead, she tightened the noose around the laborers' necks, driving prices sky high and bleeding the people dry. The hatred of the commoners deepened. They whispered that this woman would be the doom of the prestigious Winter bloodline. Evelyn scoffed at the gossip, laughing from her ivory tower until karma came knocking. The family business, once thought eternal, began to crumble into dust. With no male heir to secure the succession, the once great house of Winter began its slow, painful descent into oblivion. Enough history. Back in the present, a new day dawns, but our Villainess is already seething with fury. She looks ready to strangle Gilus with her bare hands. Negotiations are failing spectacularly. She slams her teacup down, shattering the silence, and dares him to repeat his insolent words. The man doesn't flinch. He calmly states his demand. He wants to purchase everything: her territory, her title, and the very name of Winter. If she refuses, the military will seize every last asset she possesses. She will be stripped of her power and cast out of the Duke's mansion. He offers her a way out, sell everything now and live a life of peace. But Evelyn's pride is a fortress that cannot be breached. She arrogantly declares she has no need for his dirty money. Gilus actually laughs in her face. Everyone knows her empire is rotting from the inside. Marked as a traitor who aided the enemy, her reputation is in tatters. No merchant in their right mind would dare do business with her now. Her only logical move is to surrender the title. Yet, defying all reason, Evelyn refuses to sign the contract he places before her. Gilus warns her with cold precision, do not fight a war you cannot win. It is time to accept her tragic fate. But Evelyn Winter is not a woman who surrenders, especially not to an enemy she once controlled. Rather than let Gilus claim victory, she will gamble everything. She will appeal to the one man above the law, the king himself. Even a war hero like Gilus must bow to the crown. She commands her servant Isaac to pack their bags immediately. At first light, she marches to the capital to demand royal mercy. Night falls, but her rage burns brighter than the stars. She replays Gilus's arrogance in her mind. His claim that resistance is futile. It only fuels her resolve. She will burn the world down before she lets him take a single pebble from her. Lost in her internal tirade against the man, she fails to notice a small shadow creeping toward her in the darkness. When a hand touches her, instinct takes over. She violently slaps it away, but horror strikes when she looks down to see her daughter. Sure. Guilt pierces her heart as the little angel's face crumples. The baby breaks into sobs, and Evelyn spends the next hours rocking her child, whispering soft apologies until the crying ceases. Finally, silence returns. This child is a burden, yet she is also Evelyn's greatest strength, the reason she must be invincible. She swears a silent oath no one will steal their sanctuary. Holding her daughter close, Evelyn finally drifts into a troubled sleep. The little one wakes to find her mother shivering in thin night clothes, vulnerable to the cold night air, driven by love. The child wanders off to find a warm blanket. But this innocent act leaves the door wide open for an intruder. Gilus steps into the room, only to freeze. Evelyn is murmuring in her sleep, calling out the name of her deceased husband. Irritated, he ruthlessly kicks the chair to wake her. He didn't come to kill her, but to feed her. He noticed she hadn't touched a morsel of food all day and brought a bowl himself. He cannot afford for her to fall ill before the end. Clearly, he has forgotten the depths of her stubbornness. She rejects the food, accusing him of bribery, and demands he leave. But her defiance is cut short when his large hand suddenly cups her face. Gilus has no illicit intentions. He is simply checking her temperature, worried that the heat radiating from her is a fever. Ever since her youth, Evelyn harbored a dangerous habit. Whenever illness struck, she would stubbornly refuse to eat a single bite. But Gilus's kindness met a cold wall. She slapped his hand away, eyes blazing with distrust. She demanded the truth, accusing him of merely pretending to care while plotting something sinister. Did he crave revenge? Gilus only scoffed at the notion. To him, she was now nothing more than a wounded animal, utterly unworthy of his wrath. True vengeance requires a worthy target, and right now, she had nothing left for him to destroy. Evelyn trembled, on the verge of collapsing from pure rage. Yet, When he offered the spoon again, she shoved him away with the last of her strength. His patience finally snapped. Gillis roughly forced her back into the chair. He sneered, warning her to drop the act of power when she was so pitifully weak. She clung to her pride, desperately planning to beg the king for aid. But Gillis had other plans. Since she had discarded the spoon, he would force the nourishment down by other means. Her heart raced, fearing he might feed her mouth to mouth. But romance was dead between them. He jammed the bowl against her lips, letting the gruel spill carelessly over her face. He offered no comfort, only a cold warning. She needed to stop this stubborn resistance and accept her cruel new reality. Just as he tried to force another spoonful, a sudden impact struck him from behind, an ambush. Tiny fists rained down on his back. Gillis glanced down to find his attacker. It was none other than little Sherry. The poor child fought with all her might, believing she was a warrior, but against his stature, her attacks were as light as falling feathers. Yet, her bravery bought Evelyn a moment of peace. Gillis stepped back, releasing the stubborn woman. He commanded her to finish the rest, or else. If she collapsed now, she would be nothing but a heavy burden to her crumbling family. It might seem impossible now, but their story was not always one of hate. Once, Gillis and Evelyn shared a bond deeper than blood. They were master and servant, and secretly lovers. Years ago, a sudden downpour trapped them together. Back then, a mere brush of their skin was enough to set their cheeks aflame. Gillis offered to brave the storm to find help, but Evelyn, terrified and clinging, refused to let him go. She confessed her fear of the dark forest, begging him to stay. He worried the cold rain would sicken her, but she shook her head with a smile. After all, his warmth was all the shelter she needed. The young Gillis was too shy to meet her gaze, but Evelyn longed to see him. She wondered what beauty lay hidden beneath the long hair that always veiled his eyes. Her teasing made the boy's heart race so fast he wanted to flee. But she caught him, ordering him to remain by her side. She whispered that he was the only treasure she possessed. Those words melted his defenses, and he surrendered to her will. Under the falling rain, they shared a perfect, lingering kiss, but that foolish, beautiful boy was gone. We returned to the cold, harsh present. The morning sun brought only fresh despair for Evelyn. Fate played a cruel joke. Her carriage had mysteriously broken down overnight. The coachman was on the verge of tears. He swore he checked everything the night before. It had been in perfect condition. Yet, by dawn, a critical wheel lay in ruins. Sabotage hung heavy in the air. Her desperate plan to beg the king for salvation was in jeopardy. Conveniently, Gillis appeared, offering a seat in his carriage bound for the capital. Evelyn instantly refused. She would rather wait 3 agonizing hours for repairs than spend a single second trapped with him. But Gillis had run out of patience for her pride. Without a word, he scooped her up and carried her toward his vehicle. He whispered a sharp warning against her struggle. Eyes were watching them, and he would not tolerate a scene. Evelyn's fury boiled over. She slapped him across the face. His soldiers watched in horror, heart stopping as this woman struck their terrifying commander. Yet, the man himself remained chillingly calm. He simply tossed her into the carriage like a sack of grain. Evelyn stared at him, wondering if this monster was truly the boy she once knew. He ignored her glare, but deep down, a twisted satisfaction bloomed. She was no longer fragile. She had the energy to fight. It seemed forcing that food down her throat had worked after all. The carriage began to move, but the war inside continued. Evelyn announced she felt nauseous. Coldly, he advised her to vomit out the window. She scoffed, convinced he only cared about his precious upholstery. Her eyes narrowed. She told him he looked no better than a loyal dog. She mocked the days when he couldn't even meet her eyes. To emphasize her point, she kicked the supply box at his feet. But no matter how poisonous her words, his expression remained like stone. Evelyn seethed with frustration. This unshakable man was a stranger to her memories. He bore no resemblance to the boy who once held her heart. Yet, those sharp words sliced deeper into Gillis than any blade. His mind flashed back to their final, bloody encounter. The day she nearly beat him to death with her own hands. Back then, he was clueless to his crime. Blinded by love, he had cast aside his dignity. He knelt in the dirt, weeping, begging her not to abandon him. He would have torn the world apart just to stay by her side, but she was ice cold. She banished him from the mansion, warning him to vanish forever. Gillis believed her rage stemmed from a simple misunderstanding involving another woman. He tried to explain his innocence, but Evelyn refused to listen. She struck him with such force that blood trickled down his face. And now, seeing her recall those moments with such disdain, it ignited a fresh, infernal rage within his soul. As Evelyn reaches out to touch him, he flinches violently and shoves her away. The trauma resurfaces instantly. He believes she only wants to inflict more pain. With eyes full of resentment, he spits that she has no right to judge how much he has changed. They arrive at the towering royal castle, and he dismounts in silence. The heavy air between them remains. He refuses to utter a single word about the history they share. To him, their past is nothing but filth, a dirty story he wishes to scrub from his memory. The two step into the lion's den, completely unaware that a predator is stalking them from the shadows. High above the castle grounds, a hidden gaze burns with obsession. A man is watching Evelyn, drinking in her presence. It is Victor Altric, the ruthless second candidate for the throne. 7 long years have passed since he saw her at her husband's funeral, but now, the prize has finally returned. He marvels at her timeless beauty. Even in the mournful garb of a widow, her radiance is blinding, utterly untouched by grief. A dark resolve hardens in the man's heart. Now that she has walked into his web, he swears he will never let her escape his grasp again. Victor rushes out, wearing a mask of delight to greet her, but Evelyn remains ice cold. She offers only a polite bow, apologizing for bringing her burdens to his doorstep. Of course, Victor waves off her apology with a charming smile. He leans in, feigning deep concern as he asks about her arduous journey. He offers her warm tea and hospitality, trying to trap her in conversation. But Evelyn has no patience for his games. She sidesteps his advances, declaring her urgent need to clear up the misunderstanding. She demands an audience with the king, but Victor instantly blocks her path. His smile falters as he delivers the bad news. The emperor is gravely ill. The ruler of the nation cannot even lift his head from his pillow. Sickness has fogged the king's mind, stripping him of his sanity. Victor insists she must wait, perhaps indefinitely, until his health returns. He dismisses her plight with a wave of his hand. Surely, a trivial misunderstanding won't ruin a woman of her stature. Evelyn hides her disgust and feigns agreement, but then she points a sharp finger at Gillis. She remarks that Victor's dogs are far too stubborn for their own good. If she fails to resolve this today, iron chains await her. Victor laughs, telling her not to fault Gillis. The man is a creature of habit. He takes his duty with deadly seriousness. Victor introduces the colonel proudly, revealing him as his personal savior. Victor recounts a bloody battle where death was certain until Gillis intervened. It took immense effort to tame this wild mercenary and bring him into the royal fold. Victor heaps praise upon his hound. He calls Gillis a weapon without equal, perfect for hunting down and obliterating enemies. He chuckles, wondering if his loyal dog mistook Evelyn for prey and treated her with his usual brutality. The answer is a resounding yes, but Evelyn bites her tongue. Instead, she puts on a performance worthy of an award, pretending to be charmed. She claims her time with him was like walking on clouds. She even wipes away a fake tear, acting moved by Gillis' supposedly sweet behavior. Her act works, and the path to the king is opened. But before she can flee, Victor corners her with a sudden confession of love. He urges her to lean on him, to surrender her burdens. He whispers that it is time to bury the memory of her dead husband and begin anew. Her eyes turn razor sharp. She asks, voice dripping with innocence, "Is that why you killed him?" Victor freezes, struck dumb by her audacity. Evelyn laughs it off as a dark joke and slips away before he can recover. She enters the royal chambers, where the king's eyes light up at her arrival. The rumors were true. The king is withering away, his hands discolored and frail. Evelyn bows low, apologizing deeply for her long absence. Meanwhile, the Archduke is tearing his room apart in a fit of rage. He screams insults, unable to handle being ignored by the woman he craves. He loathes that untouchable pride in her eyes, while the man crashes out like a spoiled child. Gillis sits in the corner, quietly sipping wine. The colonel is already numb to Evelyn's arrogance, but it turns out Gillis is not the only one hunting for the ghost of Rowan. Victor, too, suspects the former duke still walks this earth. Inside the chamber, the king speaks to Evelyn for the first time since the tragedy. Grief weighs heavy on his voice as he mentions Rowan. The man was a prodigy, a beacon of hope destined to lead their country into a golden age. Yet, that light was snuffed out too soon. And just like Evelyn, the king harbors a dark suspicion Victor was the one holding the knife. Rowan and Victor were scholars at the same academy. The king believes a green-eyed monster consumed Victor's soul. The Archduke has always been consumed by greed. Watching Rowan take the top spot and the people's love must have driven him to murderous hatred. The Emperor is certain of it. The snares tangling Evelyn's life right now were all set by Victor's hand. He aims to corner her, using threats and fear to force her into a marriage she despises. She cannot fight this monster alone. The king, disgusted by Victor's ambition, vows to lend her his remaining strength. Rowan may be gone, but the Winter family's spirit remains unbroken elsewhere. Victor is convinced Rowan lives and commands Gillis to hunt him down. He does not care if the man is breathing or rotting. He wants Gillis to drag the body back so he can mutilate it before Evelyn and watch her pride shatter into dust. His voice drops to a menacing growl as he threatens Gillis to execute this mission perfectly. Since he created this weapon, he can also snap it in two. Victor offers a portrait of Rowan for reference, but Gillis refuses with a cold stare. The colonel needs no visual aid. The target's face is already burned into his memory. In fact, he knows the man so well it makes his eyes ache. After all, he was the artist who painted Rowan standing beside Evelyn on their wedding day. As Evelyn begs the king for one last chance to prove her loyalty, Gillis swears into his cup that he will find Rowan no matter the cost. Evelyn steps out of the royal audience chamber, exhausted, but there is no rest for the weary. A sea of expectant faces awaits her outside. It is a trap. Archduke Victor has assembled the nobility, using the crowd as pressure to force a dinner invitation and an escort home upon her. Evelyn sees right through his charming mask. This is a power play. Victor, born the son of a concubine, is starving for legitimacy. An archduke's title is not enough to satisfy his hunger. His eyes are set firmly on the throne itself. He already holds the military in the palm of his hand. He has the strength and the cunning to seize the crown, save for one fatal flaw: his bloodline. In the kingdom of Alter, purity of blood is the currency of power, and the nobles hoard it jealously. As a concubine's son, Victor can never truly command their respect. That is why he needs Evelyn. This gathering is his stage. If she steps into his carriage today, she is silently announcing to the world that she accepts his proposal and his ambition. Evelyn recoils at the thought, but the wall of nobles blocks her escape. She is cornered. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the crowd. It is Joshua Alter, the rightful heir. The young prince rushes in, scolding his uncle for intimidating a lady, asking if he has no shame. Victor's smile falters. He sneers at his rival, telling the boy he should be playing in the academy, but Joshua stands his ground. The prince isn't here for politics, he is here for her. One look at Evelyn, and the fierce royal turns into a blushing mess. Evelyn's eyes light up. She didn't expect the young heir to remember her, but it seems Joshua is her biggest admirer. He asks about her well-being with genuine worry. Victor tries to shoo him away like a fly, but Evelyn steps in, shielding the boy. She turns her sharp tongue on Victor, declaring that Joshua will graduate at the very top of his class. In this kingdom, scholars are the pillars of society. She praises the poor boy until he turns bright red, stuttering that he only wishes to be as great as her late husband. Seizing the momentum, Evelyn makes her move. She asks Joshua for a favor that will change everything. She spins a tale of danger, claiming a pack of wolves attacked her carriage. She needs a gallant escort to return to her castle safely. The three men freeze. The request hangs in the air like a dropped sword. While Gillis and Victor simmer with annoyance, Joshua beams with pride and immediately agrees. Evelyn bows in gratitude. To repay this chivalry, she makes a vow loud enough for the crowd to hear. As long as Alter stands, House Winter belongs to Joshua. They will be his shield and his sword. The nobles murmur in awe of her bold declaration. Everyone knows the Archduke tried to corner her, but Evelyn didn't just escape his trap. She humiliated him and pledged loyalty to his rival. Victor's face twists in rage. He spits poison, accusing her of seducing the king and now clawing her way to the young prince. He calls her shameless, but Evelyn stands like an ice queen, unbothered. She tells him he is clinging to a rotting rope. He laughs, but it is a hollow, dangerous sound. He vows that she will regret humiliating him today. Just then, Gillis steps forward to offer his assistance for the journey, but there is a logistical problem. The carriage is too high. With her injured leg, Evelyn cannot climb up. Without a word, Gillis drops to one knee, offering his own body as a step. His gentleness is terrifying. Evelyn cannot read his true intentions. Reluctantly, she steps on him, ruining her heels to enter the carriage. Gillis looks at her with eyes full of pity, telling her to rest. But to Evelyn, his sympathy feels toxic. She finds his act of caring absolutely revolting, but Gillis remains unfazed by her coldness. He smiles, genuinely happy that she is recovering, even thanking the gods for her life. Evelyn is confused, but she refuses to show weakness. She stares him down, warning him to never appear before her again. As the carriage rolls away, Gillis's assistant approaches. The aide notices the twisted joy on his master's face. Indeed, our male lead is ecstatic. He remembers the hunting lessons Evelyn taught him. The true thrill of the hunt isn't the chase. It is when the prey stops running and decides to fight back. Evelyn is now his prey. Gillis is glad she is healthy. He is glad she has a husband, a child, and a reputation she holds dear. He is happy she has so much to lose, because that means he can take it all away. When Evelyn left him years ago, Gillis realized how small he was to her. He was nothing. But this time, he will use every lesson she taught him to drag her into a living hell. Days pass, and Evelyn accepts a new mission. She takes on the impossible rebuilding the Brinkton Railway. Even her capable assistant, Isaac, thinks it is madness. The Brinkton project is a massive bridge connecting the mainland to a region rich with mines. It was the dream of her late husband, Rowan Winter. He wanted to expand the country's trade by conquering the sea with steel and steam. At first, he defied the odds. Despite the doubters, the bridge rose from the waves. But on the day of the grand opening, tragedy struck. A train exploded in a ball of fire. Was it a technical failure, or the work of enemies in the shadows? The construction halted, leaving the dream in ruins. Now, the weight of the entire world rests on Evelyn's shoulders. She must rebuild the bridge from the ashes. Isaac trembles, terrified that enemy nations will strike or a fatal flaw lies hidden within the blueprints. In his eyes, doom is inevitable, and failure is the only destination. Yet, Evelyn stands like a statue of resolve, seeing absolute perfection in the design. Truly, she has no other path to walk. To escape the abyss of ruin, she struck a dangerous bargain with the king. She would pave the way for Joshua to seize the throne. It is a calculated gamble. If she, the representative of the noble faction, bows her head to Joshua, the rest of the sheep will surely follow their shepherd. But the reality is harsh. The Winter family has lost its fangs. All that remains to shield her from the wolves is the support of the church. To solidify her power and crown a new king, she needs a miracle. She needs a weapon of influence. That weapon is the Brinkton Project. Evelyn swore a blood oath to the king to expand their trade across the borders. Now, destiny leaves her no room for retreat. She must fulfill that vow. The very survival of her bloodline hangs by a thread. Suddenly, their tension is shattered by an intruder. Guileless Black arrives, his voice booming as he scolds them for trespassing on forbidden ground. He demands to see their permits with the authority of a tyrant. Evelyn sighs, her patience wearing thin with this insufferable man. With ice in her voice, she counters that he is the one shamelessly obstructing official business, but Gillis scoffs, disbelieving her words, and commands her to leave immediately. Finally, Evelyn drops the facade. She reveals this is a national mandate, bestowed directly by the king himself. If anyone must vanish, it is Gillis. Seizing command, Evelyn orders Isaac to retreat with the precious blueprints. Gillis, realizing the gravity of the situation, dismisses his aide so they may speak in the shadows. His demeanor shifts instantly. Gillis looks at her with eyes full of worry, warning her that this construction site is a death trap. He pours out affection she didn't ask for, leaving Evelyn bewildered. Even after she treated him like dust beneath her feet, his heart still beats for her. He is nothing like Victor, that monster who lives only to see the Winter family crushed. Yet, Evelyn has no time to indulge in such useless emotions. Her mind is a fortress, focused only on one thing, ensuring the legacy her late husband left behind does not crumble into dust. A wave of grief crashes over our female lead. She misses her husband terribly. When he drew breath, his soul was consumed with saving Altar and expanding the kingdom's horizons. His voice echoes in her memory, reminding her that the Brington Bridge is the very artery of the nation's lifeblood. Lost in the haunted corridors of her memory, she fails to see the Reaper looming above. A massive fragment of the bridge breaks loose, plummeting straight for her. But Gillis moves with lightning speed. He snatches her from the jaws of death, though the icy waters below claim her foot, soaking the injury in freezing cold. Panic rises in Gillis's eyes. He fears the frost will claim her leg, but Evelyn shoves him away, her pride refusing to accept his pity or concern. Gillis snaps, calling her stubbornness a curse. Does she want to lose her toes to the frost just to prove a point? Evelyn fires back, her temper flaring. She tells him to cut off his ears since he refuses to listen. She can barely stand, yet she declares she needs no savior. Gillis can no longer watch this self-destruction. Ignoring her protests, he hoists her up and drags her toward safety. The sky darkens as a brutal snowstorm descends. They seek refuge in an old shed, waiting for nature's wrath to pass, but as Evelyn steps inside, the past hits her like a physical blow. This shed, this was their sanctuary. The very place where she and Gillis once whispered secrets and shared their first intimate embrace. Now, fate plays a cruel joke. What will spark when these two former lovers are trapped in the cage of their shared history? The storm rages outside, but the silence inside is deafening. They sit as prisoners of the weather, neither daring to break the heavy atmosphere. Gillis tries to break the tension, scavenging for firewood to warm the freezing room. Evelyn, however, is drowning in a flood of nostalgia. Nothing has changed. The wood, the smell, the shadows, it is exactly as she remembers. No matter how high she builds her walls, the past always finds a way in. Gillis ignites the fire, the flames dancing in his eyes. He gently urges Evelyn to move closer, to let the warmth dry her soaked clothes. Evelyn observes him, certain this isn't his first time surviving the cold. He smirks, reminding her that he is a soldier of the Empire, drawing a rare chuckle from her. Who could have predicted that the boy with the carving knife would grow into a warrior, suddenly? The atmosphere shifts as Gillis leans in. His fingers brush through her hair, sending a jolt of electricity through her. Nervousness spikes. She stammers that she can walk back to the mansion alone, but the man refuses to budge. If he lets her walk out into that white hell, she will freeze to death. Evelyn bitterly muses that Victor would probably throw a party if he saw her corpse. Gillis shakes his head. The Archduke would find her death terribly boring. The conversation flows smoothly, until Gillis dares to speak of the dead. Perhaps it is the ghost of their past haunting the shed, but Gillis can no longer suppress the jealousy burning in his chest. He cannot fathom that Evelyn truly gave her heart to that man. He despises Rowan Winter, refusing to believe that the dead lord ever truly loved her. After all, the man vanished into the mist, leaving her alone to clean up a catastrophic mess. A man who truly loved her would never abandon her to such danger. His words strike a nerve, and Evelyn explodes with fury. She hates how the world whispers that her husband is alive, hiding like a coward. Gillis accuses her husband of endangering her, but Evelyn turns the blade back on him. Does he think she's blind? Why would a war hero like Gillis be stationed near the Winter family? It is obvious he is a pawn of the Archduke, her sworn enemy. Evelyn calls him out for his hypocrisy. He stands there, preaching about safety, while he is the very danger she should fear. He serves the Archduke, actively helping Victor to make her life a living hell. How dare he speak of protection? He may resent her for leaving him in the past, but Victor will discard him just the same. Evelyn sneers, telling Gillis he is nothing but a pitiful dog biting its own master, though she admits she was never a master worthy of loyalty. Gillis forces Evelyn to face the mirror of her past cruelty. She spits venom, claiming she never trusted him and cast him aside without a second thought. Mocking his audacity, she declares her undying devotion to her husband, a union blessed by the heavens themselves. How dare a peasant like him tarnish her sacred marriage with his filth? Her cruel words pierce the air, leaving Sheila heartbroken in the corner. But Gillis has finished playing games with this wicked woman. He sees her marriage for what it truly is, a farce. He drags her memory back to this very shed, the place where they first crossed the line, committing a beautiful, sinful crime together. Yet she has the audacity to call her marriage pure. Gillis presses on, his voice dripping with scorn. Did you wear white on that day, even though you were already stained by my touch? It was all a performance, a masquerade of innocence played out before the priest and the eyes of the world. The devotion she screams about, nothing but lies spilling from her poisonous lips. Then, Gillis commits the ultimate taboo. He insults the one thing she protects, her husband. Smack. Rage explodes as Evelyn's palm meets his cheek. Els watches in horror as Gillis makes a chilling vow. Your beloved husband will never see the gates of heaven. Fury consumes her. She strikes him again, desperate to silence the truth. She screams that he is vile, that his behavior is repulsive. Leave our dirty past in the shadows where it belongs, she commands. Stop being so disgusting. The slap was brutal. Blood trickles from his mouth, staining his skin, but Gillis doesn't flinch. He wipes the crimson fluid and smears it sensually across Evelyn's lips. This battle is far from over. He vows to drag her into the mud, to show her just how filthy he can truly be. For Evelyn, the dam breaks. She can no longer contain her explosive rage. Her hands fly to his throat. She begins to strangle Gillis with raw, unbridled fury. The decision is made. She will end this wretched man's life with her own bare hands. One might wonder how her husband would react to seeing his wife in such a feral state. Evelyn does not care. Her mind is consumed by a singular, bloody determination: kill Gillis. Once he is a corpse rotting in the afterlife, he can take his complaints up with her husband personally. But Gillis is a survivor, and he refuses to let his nemesis snuff him out so easily. He hisses that his time to die has not yet come. In fact, the tables are about to turn. In a blur of motion, Gillis draws a gun and levels the cold barrel directly between Evelyn's eyes. The tension freezes in time as we drift back into the shadows of the past. A flashback to where Gillis's torment truly began. Back then, the news of her marriage shattered him. Forced to paint the wedding portrait of the woman he loved, his soul cracked. All he wanted was to vanish, to escape the pain by disappearing forever. But Evelyn became his cage. She intercepted his flight, pleading with desperate eyes. She begged him to stay, binding him to her side with promises of eternity. Yet, words are wind. Despite the whispered vows and stolen intimacy, she was the one to cast him aside first. She drove him away, cruelly disguising her abandonment as a gift of freedom. She wanted him to live fine. He would live, but not for love. He forged a new purpose in the fires of his hatred, absolute revenge against Evelyn. He became a wandering ghost, drifting from shadow to shadow until fate intervened. On a day like any other, he saved the life of the powerful Archduke. Victor, the Archduke, owed him a life debt and offered his patronage to the Savior. But there was a problem. This man standing before him had no name to call his own. It was Evelyn who had christened him Gillis Black, a name born from her lips. Now, he vows to take that commoner's title and carve it into history with blood and ambition. The world may have discarded him time and again, but he refuses to stay in the dirt. He will rewrite his destiny, and the ink will be the blood of his enemies. And now, that dark wish is manifesting into reality. The flashback snaps shut, leaving us with the deadly reality of his gun pointed straight at Evelyn's face. Elsewhere, the silence is shattered, a deafening gunshot rings out, and soldiers in the distance watch as a sinister plume of smoke rises against the sky. Gillis's assistant doesn't even flinch, as if he orchestrated the chaos himself. Calmly, he orders the men to prepare a carriage. The show is over. Evelyn may believe the nightmare has ended, but a hurricane is approaching the Winter family. Victor is making his move, and his thirst for vengeance is insatiable. He has curated a magnificent, twisted gift for her. He dials the Winter mansion, anticipating her voice. But fate plays a cruel joke. The mistress is absent. Instead, he gets Marie, the governess. Victor wastes no time, his voice dripping with venom as he mocks the Winter family's rigid, suffocating propriety. Mockery aside, the delivery is imminent. Chaos strikes the mansion right on cue. The doors burst open, and in rushes Isaac, Evelyn's assistant, but he looks like he has seen a ghost. He is drenched in crimson, a horrifying sight of blood and desperation. He brings news that is about to shatter Evelyn's world completely. A vicious ambush strikes on the journey home. The crucial blueprints for the Brington project are stolen in the chaos, but Victor is far from finished. His twisted game of gifts has only just begun. His soldiers descend upon the Winter mansion, bearing news darker than the night itself. Meanwhile, Evelyn remains blissfully ignorant. She has no idea that her family's legacy is crumbling into absolute chaos. She remains trapped in Gillis's grasp, her heart pounding against her ribs. The weapon fires, and she braces for death, but it wasn't a bullet. The gun was merely a flare signal, lighting up the sky. It was a beacon to summon his forces. Almost instantly, his assistant and men emerge from the shadows, bringing a grand carriage for their master. He commands Evelyn to enter, intending to escort her back to her estate, but her pride remains unbroken. She scoffs at him, claiming he just wasted his one perfect chance to eliminate her for good. She is convinced she will never need Gillis's aid again. How wrong she is. Gillis simply laughs, mocking her naivety in the face of the storm to come. She clings to her arrogance, unaware that her world is being stripped away piece by piece. Elsewhere, the mastermind, Victor, continues his chilling conversation with Marie. He has curated one final, devastating present for the lonely noblewoman to cure her solitude. He has ruthlessly purchased every single property surrounding the Winter estate. A cruel smile plays on his lips. He revels in the irony, mocking Evelyn for letting such a precious heritage slip through her fingers. Years ago, she foolishly sold the Winter's land, blind to the buyer's identity. Now the trap snaps shut. Victor owns nearly half her territory and has erected a looming mansion directly opposite hers. The stage is set for the final confrontation. His soldiers march forth, delivering an invitation that spells doom for the Winter family. A sealed letter arrives, inviting them to a grand ball at the Black Mansion. Why there, you ask, because the Archduke has just gifted the entire territory to Guileless Black. Fate is cruel. Our sworn enemies are now our next-door neighbors. Evelyn freezes, utterly stunned by this shift in power. She cannot fathom why the Archduke would betray them like this. Meanwhile, Gillis feigns sympathy, mocking how her late husband would feel seeing his legacy sold off. With a smirk, he extends an invitation to his welcoming gala. But the subtext is clear: this is a display of dominance. This is no simple invitation. It is a direct command from the Archduke himself. Our heroine has no path of retreat. I shudder to think what sparks will fly now that they are forced together. When Evelyn returns to her estate, chaos reigns among her servants. They rush to deliver the bad news, only to freeze when they see Gillis standing right beside her like a looming shadow. Evelyn, weary to her bones, dismisses him without a fight. The moment he leaves, her worried staff swarm around their mistress. But the lady isn't worried about herself. Her gaze falls on her loyal assistant, Isaac, who looks battered and bruised. His apology confirms her worst fears: the critical documents were stolen. But priority one is survival. They need a doctor, immediately. Days drift by in a haze, but Evelyn's mind remains trapped in that moment of violation. Even as she sinks into the bath, her mind races. Why did the Archduke buy the surrounding lands? Is his sole goal to crush the Winter family completely? In the silence, the absence of Rowan aches like an open wound. If only he were here, he would have the answers. Before his passing, he warned her of the coming storm. He predicted that as the king's illness worsened, chaos would descend. The war for the throne is inevitable, and soon, their family will be forced to choose a faction or perish. Rowan foresaw the danger, yet he died leaving them vulnerable. He had no allies powerful enough to shield Evelyn from the coming darkness. Back in the present, Evelyn feels the walls closing in. She wears a mask of steel, but beneath it, her soul is exhausted. Wolves surround them on all sides. Even the servants tremble, unable to find a moment of peace within their own walls. The longing for her husband hits her with crushing force. Alone against the world, the weight of leadership feels unbearable. Despair pulls her down. She slips beneath the water's surface, ready to let the darkness claim her. Suddenly, a splash breaks the silence. Little Sherry dives into the tub, terrifying her mother as she tries to sink alongside her. Panic flares, Evelyn yanks the girl from the water, anger rising until she sees her daughter's expression. The child is trembling, tears streaming down her face. Sherry is just as lonely and scared as she is. Evelyn's anger instantly melts away. Looking at her daughter, a fire reignites in her heart. She cannot crumble. She will never run away from this battlefield. She made a sacred vow to her late husband, and she intends to keep it, no matter the cost. Their quiet moment shatters. A commotion erupts outside. Someone is forcing their way into the sanctuary. The maids are powerless to stop him. The doors burst open, revealing a striking man claiming to be a doctor as he rushes toward Evelyn. Frantic with worry, he reaches out to check for fever, ignoring all propriety. Evelyn tolerates no disrespect. She slaps him to the floor. Yet, even from the ground, the fool gives her a thumbs up. The tension breaks. She sighs, calling his name and demanding he drop the ridiculous formal act. This is Oscar Cole, her oldest friend. It has been far too long since their paths last crossed. While Evelyn dresses and Oscar assists, they believe they are safe. But in the shadows, uninvited eyes are watching. A masked figure stalks the Winter Mansion grounds. Inside, Oscar throws his head back, laughing as if he's heard the world's greatest joke. And to him, it is. When Evelyn declares she will rebuild the Brinkton Bridge, disbelief overtakes him. It isn't a lack of trust, but reality. Even the great Rowan failed this task. How can Evelyn possibly succeed where he could not? The commoners are already restless. Restarting a massive project now would only invite public outrage. It could spark a rebellion. Sensing the mood darkening, Evelyn steers the conversation away from politics. She hates the distance growing between them. She longs for the golden days when she, Oscar, and Rowan were inseparable. Oscar's smile fades. He misses them too. But then, a tiny visitor arrives. Sherry has come to see her uncle. His face lights up. He scoops her up, amazed by how much the little princess has grown. But the joy is fleeting. When he tries to coax a word from her, silence falls. The child cannot speak. No matter how gentle his prompts, Sherry remains voiceless. Not wanting to upset her, he promises a rabbit hunt and sends her off to play, alone with Evelyn. His tone turns serious. A horrific incident years ago stole her voice. Time has passed, yet the scars on her soul refuse to heal. Evelyn freezes. The memory of that blood-soaked day rushes back, terrifying and vivid. The nightmare refused to end. Her daughter had been snatched by a criminal, a blade held to her innocent throat. If Rowan Winter hadn't descended like a guardian angel to save Cher, tragedy would have struck. The mere thought of what if paralyzed her. Terror gripped Evelyn's heart like a vice, sending her teacup crashing to the floor, shattered porcelain, mirroring her shattered nerves. Oscar watched her, his heart heavy. Her gaunt frame screamed of sleepless nights and skipped meals. She was fading away right before his eyes. But Evelyn pushed the exhaustion aside. The shadow of Gilas's stern face haunted her memory. Desperate, she turned to Oscar, ready to beg for a favor that could change everything. Meanwhile, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, little Sherry was exploring the estate. A flash of white caught her eye, a fluffy rabbit, hopping through the gardens. Pure innocence lit up her face. She imagined the smiles on her mother and Oscar's faces if she could just catch it. A perfect gift of joy for the people she loved. Her heart swelled with determination. The target was locked. The little huntress began her chase, laughter bubbling in her throat. But darkness struck without warning. Bang! A gunshot tore through the silence. The innocent creature fell lifeless, right before Sherry's horrified gaze. A nightmare stepped out from the shadows. A masked figure loomed over the trembling girl, asking if she remembered his face. Far away, Evelyn had no idea the devil had returned for her child. Unaware of the danger, Evelyn was pouring her heart out to Oscar. In this nest of vipers, he was the one pillar she could still lean on. She dropped the bombshell. The Winter family wasn't just unlucky, they were being systematically annihilated. Oscar froze, unable to fathom who would orchestrate such ruin. The name Gilas was on the tip of her tongue. The truth was about to spill. But fate interrupted with a cruel twist before the words could leave her lips. Servants burst in, panic written on their faces. It was Sherry. They scrambled outside, hearts pounding, but the sight that greeted them nearly stopped Evelyn's pulse. Crimson stained the pristine earth, fresh blood, and lying next to it, a solitary, abandoned hat, her daughter's hat. Before we witness the tragedy of the present, we must understand the scars of the past. To the world, Evelyn's life seemed like a fairy tale, but reality was a horror story. When the head of the Winter house fell, the world mourned. They whispered of tragedy and pity for the fallen noble house, but pity quickly turned to poison. Whispers spread like wildfire. They didn't blame fate, they blamed her. They pointed their fingers at the young widow, the cursed woman, the harbinger of death, a walking plague who buried everyone she ever dared to love. It started at her birth, cousins dropping like flies, one by one. The verdict of the masses was unanimous. Evelyn Winter must be a witch. Words can cut deeper than knives. Evelyn drank their poison until she believed it herself. Convicted by her own guilt, she locked herself away in the shadows. She was drowning in an abyss of despair, ready to let the darkness consume her completely. But in the depths of that hell, a tiny light flickered. Someone approached her sanctuary. Evelyn, blinded by grief, assumed it was a disobedient servant. Why would anyone risk their life to be near a curse? "Leave," she commanded. Why show respect to a witch? She tried to drive the intruder away, to protect them from herself. She was terrified. Her blood was tainted with misfortune. First her cousins, then her uncle, and finally, her beloved husband. The Reaper followed wherever she stepped. The curse was a gluttonous beast. It wouldn't rest until it had stripped her of every last shred of happiness, leaving her completely alone. "I am a monster," she told herself, "a calamitous existence." She built walls of ice to keep the world safe from her touch. But the intruder didn't flee. Instead, a small, warm hand reached through the darkness, a gentle touch that defied the fear. Little Sherry didn't know it then, but that simple act was a lifeline. Those tiny hands pulled Evelyn back from the edge of the void. Her touch seemed to whisper a truth Evelyn had forgotten. Even monsters have hearts. Even the cursed deserve to be held. Looking into those eyes, brimming with unconditional love, Evelyn remembered what warmth felt like. The ice melted. From that day on, Sherry was her sun, moon, and stars. The child gave her a reason to breathe. When her world was nothing but ashes, Sherry became the spark that kept the fire of life burning. And now that light had been snatched away. Chaos reigned in the mansion. Servants scrambled in a panic, but the silence was deafening. Guards scoured every inch of the grounds, overturning stones and beating bushes, but the trail was cold. Hope was dwindling by the second. An intruder slipping past their defenses, it reeked of an inside job, someone who knew the mansion's secrets. But Evelyn was deaf to their logic. Her gaze locked onto the frozen river. A figure stood there. It looked like Sherry. And standing beside her was Rowan Winter. Logic vanished. Screams of warning faded into the background. Evelyn charged toward the deadly ice. Pain was irrelevant. Her injuries meant nothing. She had to reach them, but the distance was too great. As they began to fade into the mist, her legs gave out. She collapsed into the snow, shattered. "Please," she screamed to the phantom. "Take anything but her." She begged the ghost of Rowan not to steal the last fragment of her soul. She knew he must resent her for his death. "Punish me," she cried. "Take my life, hate me, destroy me. Just let our daughter live." Her tears melted the snow, but her eyes deceived her. The mist cleared. It wasn't Rowan standing tall in the cold. It was Guileless Black, and he was not empty-handed. With a stoic expression, he threw open his heavy coat. There, nestled against his chest, safe from the biting frost, was little Sherry. Fate had intervened. Gillis didn't just appear, he intercepted a tragedy. A kidnapper had the child in his clutches, but the Black Wolf struck first. His hunting party had stumbled upon the abduction. They snatched the girl from the jaws of danger, though the rat who took her managed to scurry into the woods. But the culprit didn't matter right now. Vengeance could wait. The only truth that matters was breathing in Gillis's arms. Mother and child collided in a tearful embrace, the world fading away around them, and for the first time in forever, the proud Evelyn Winter bowed her head in gratitude. When Gillis laments his ruined hunt, Evelyn corrects the narrative. She insists that she is the one in his debt. Determined to settle the score, she invites the colonel to visit her estate. Gillis accepts the offer. The air is calm, and everything seems settled. That is, until a sudden disturbance shatters the peace. Oscar bursts onto the scene. His first instinct is to berate Evelyn for her recklessness. How could she dive into the freezing river with such a frail constitution? He storms past Gillis, but a familiar presence stops him cold. Oscar spins around, eyes wide with disbelief. He knows this man. They were not merely a trio in the past. There was always a fourth shadow lingering behind them, their personal painter, Guileless Black. The group retreats to the Winter Mansion, but the mood is suffocating. Even the maids tremble, sweat beading on their brows. Evelyn and Oscar sit together, the tension palpable. Oscar cannot tear his gaze away. If his eyes opened any wider, they might roll out of his head. He stares at Gillis as if looking at a monster from a fairy tale. He struggles to reconcile this hardened soldier with the artist of their memories. But when he whispers the name, and Gillis responds, the truth hits home. Oscar lights up like an excited puppy finding a lost friend. The tension breaks momentarily as the two men fall into conversation. Before they can drift down memory lane, Evelyn cuts in. She offers gratitude to Gillis for saving her daughter's life. But the colonel's eyes narrow. He wants a name. Who would dare harm a child? He scoffs, mocking Evelyn for accumulating so many enemies. Since he has done her a massive favor, she bites her tongue. She cannot argue with her savior. Struggling to repay him, she offers to organize his upcoming victory ball, but Gillis coldly refuses. Instead, he decides to play a cruel game of matchmaker. Since the lovely widow lacks a date for his ball, he suggests a solution. Why not attend with Oscar? The suggestion stuns them both, but Gillis presses the knife deeper. He remarks that her late husband would surely rejoice to see her with an old friend. Rage flares within Evelyn. She chastises Gillis for his insolence, reminding him of the vast chasm between their social standings. He has no right to speak of her husband. Gillis offers an apology, but the venom in his voice betrays him. He is not sorry at all. He ridicules Evelyn for clinging to etiquette. To him, caring about superficial manners is a waste of breath. While soldiers bleed on the battlefield, nobles rot in luxury learning culture. But since Evelyn is so desperate to repay him, he demands a guest room for the night. A blizzard begins to howl outside, sealing their fate. Gillis will be staying within the walls of the winter mansion tonight. Safe in his quarters, Oscar's a nervous wreck. And who could blame him? The air between Evelyn and Gillis is thick enough to choke on. He wonders what transpired in the years after he left the capital. He cannot fathom how a humble servant rose to become a decorated colonel. The transformation is shocking, but the animosity is worse. Why do Evelyn and Gillis look at each other with such hatred now? In the past, the bond between master and servant was undeniable. They were inseparable. A realization strikes Oscar like a bolt of lightning. Meanwhile, isolated in her chambers, Evelyn's frail body begins to fail her. She reaches for the bell to summon help, but hesitates. She cannot bear to be a burden to anyone else. She attempts to find medicine on her own, but stops. The door to her private study stands ajar, expecting Oscar. She freezes when she sees the intruder. It is the last man she wished to see. At the same moment, Oscar is spiraling into a mental breakdown in his room. The buried memories finally surface. He remembers that day clearly. He saw it. Gillis kissing Evelyn while she slept. That was not the gaze of a servant. It was the look of a man in love. Now, that same man stands in the dark, staring intensely at her wedding portrait. Evelyn pushes the door open, her heart pounding. Seeing him there stops her in her tracks. She never expected to find Gillis here and demands to know his purpose. Gillis remains silent about his motives, simply offering a cold compliment on the painting. Evelyn bristles at his audacity. She scolds him for prowling through another's home in the dead of night like a thief. Since he seems so full of energy, she suggests he leave immediately. He should return to his own estate. Gillis offers no reply, and her mind begins to race. Silence is dangerous. She is certain he is plotting something nefarious. She is trapped. Leaving is risky, but calling for help is worse. The servants would whisper if they found them together at this hour. The stress splits her head open. Suddenly, the source of her headache approaches. His hand brushes her forehead. She is burning up. He orders her to summon a doctor, but she stubbornly refuses. Jealousy flares in his eyes. He asks if he interrupted a secret rendezvous with Oscar. He knows exactly how to provoke her. She rises to strike him, but pain crashes over her, forcing her back. She cannot even muster the strength to argue. She denies his accusations, but he continues his taunts until she falls silent. Gillis pours himself a drink while Evelyn sips water. Perhaps it is the fever, but her mind begins to wander down a scandalous path. Desperate to cool her heating body, she reaches for a glass, but in her haze, she grabs Gillis's wine instead of water. The alcohol burns her throat like fire. She breaks into a fit of coughing, and Gillis quickly pours a cup of fresh water. He brings the cup to her lips with surprising gentleness, even as he grumbles about her fragile constitution. Past or present, she always demands so much care. He asks if she is all right, but the wine has already taken hold. Evelyn is drunk. Time blurs. Thinking she is back in the past, she reaches out to cup his face. He tries to pull away, but she collapses into his arms, surrendering to sleep. Gillis stands frozen, unsure of how to handle the fragile woman before him. He gently tucks her onto the couch, covering her with a blanket. Just as he turns to leave, A shadow moves outside the window. Danger lurks nearby, but suddenly, soft arms wrap around his waist from behind. She whispers that she is freezing, and Gillis cannot resist her plea. Trapped in the darkness, the heat rises between them. Evelyn drifts into a vivid dreamscape. She hunts a crimson fox, imagining how perfect its fur would look as a scarf for Gillis. She searches for her lover to present the gift, but the prize in her hand suddenly morphs into the severed head of her uncle. Horror paralyzes her as the dead eyes open and the head begins to speak. "You are a curse," it shrieks. He claims his pity saved her once, but now her existence has doomed them all to the grave. Guilt consumes her soul as she begs for innocence. Just as the darkness swallows her, a savior descends. It is Rowan. He scoops her up, vowing eternal protection, but her relief shatters when she spots Gillis turning his back on her, walking away into the void. She screams his name, jolting awake only to find herself resting not on a pillow, but on Gillis's lap. The man remains stoic, turning a page of his book as if nothing out of the ordinary has occurred. Panic sets in. Did she spill her secrets in her sleep? He denies it, gently cooling her fever with a damp cloth and guiding her head back to his lap. He commands her to rest until the fever breaks. Evelyn trembles, fearing the scandal if the servants were to catch them in this intimate position. "Fear not," Gillis murmurs, his voice calm. He possesses the skills of a ghost. He can vanish without a soul noticing. All he demands is that she recover. Evelyn stares at him, drowning in confusion. Is this mercy for a sick woman, or is the predator merely lulling his prey into a false sense of safety before destroying the Winter family? Perhaps the alcohol clouds her judgment, for she is resting her head on the lap of her mortal enemy. Yet, a strange peace washes over her. When the morning light breaks, the warmth is gone. Gillis has vanished. She rushes to the window, watching his retreating figure disappear. But the man's heart is in turmoil. He lied about her silence last night. In truth, she had clung to him with the desperate need of a child. She had nearly kissed him, shattering his resolve. Now, the day of Gillis's grand celebration banquet has finally arrived. Gillis breaks tradition, inviting commoners who gaze in awe at the elite celebrities mingling among them. The Archduke's influence is vast, but even he could not command such an impressive turnout alone. Gillis has outdone the nobility. His ball shines brighter and grander than any high society gala in recent history. One man scrambles for attention, desperate to speak to the ladies. Behind him, whispers of mockery spread like wildfire among the commoners. He claims the title of a nobleman, yet he begs for coin to feed his insatiable gambling addiction. Count Theodore is a stain on the aristocracy. Even the lower classes see through his facade. Titles mean nothing to them now. The line between noble and commoner blurs. Only gold rules this world. But now, the true star of the night appears. Gillis Black enters, looking breathtakingly handsome. He stands in solitary majesty in the corner until the Archduke approaches. Victor beams, praising the magnificent spectacle Gillis has orchestrated. He drags our hero into the spotlight, teasing him about the hearts he has unknowingly stolen from every woman in the room. Yet, none of these admiring gazes belong to the one woman Gillis actually desires. He scans the crowd, finding nothing. His eyes drift to the window, fixated on the mansion across the way with a longing stare. Meanwhile, chaos reigns at the Winter estate. The servants are on the brink of collapse. Time is running out, yet their mistress rejects every gown. Evelyn stands firm. She hates the clothes prepared for her. The maids are horrified. These silks cost a fortune, imported from the finest boutiques in distant lands. Evelyn ignores the luxury. Instead, she chooses a dress from her own closet, a relic of her past. It is simple, but it is authentically her. She commands the maid to retrieve it. What masterpiece will our girl unveil tonight? Back at the ball, the guest Victor has been anxiously awaiting finally descends. Disappointment strikes. It is not Evelyn. Victor presents this arrival as a gift he specifically prepared for Gillis. The most coveted woman in Alter, Lady Perez, steps from the carriage. Her purple hair flows like silk as she greets them. This is Sonia Perez, a woman carrying the noble blood of the Archduke's kin. Victor pushes them together, boldly declaring her beauty unrivaled across the entire continent. Cornered by duty, our male lead bows. He introduces himself to the shy lady, though his heart remains far away. Gillis extends a hand to Sonia, offering himself as her partner for the evening's grand ball. The young lady is moments away from accepting his hand when the rumble of wheels interrupts them. A final carriage has arrived. Whispers ripple through the crowd as curiosity peaks. Who is this last mysterious guest? It is none other than the iron-willed head of the Winter family, Evelyn Winter. But instead of awe, her appearance triggers a wave of mocking laughter. She isn't dressed for a celebration. She looks like a nun, or worse, a widow attending a solemn funeral. Clad in a stark black dress and matching hat, Evelyn ignores their ridicule with cold indifference. The nobles sneer at her attire, whispering that the woman has clearly lost her mind. She turns her sharp gaze to Victor, expressing her disappointment. She attended solely on his command, yet she is met with such a frigid reception. Victor feigns innocence, refusing to accept such an accusation. With a charming smile, he vows to treat her with the utmost care from now on. Seizing upon his words, Evelyn issues a bold demand. Gillis must be her partner for the night. The crowd gasps in disbelief as Gillis instantly agrees to her terms. He presses a reverent kiss to Evelyn's hand before escorting her inside. The Archduke and his cousin can only watch, their annoyance simmering beneath the surface. Victor steps aside to calculate his next move, while Sonia glares at Evelyn, hissing the word witch under her breath. Evelyn strides in with guileless black, inciting a fresh storm of gossip. Envy poisons the air as they question why the distinguished colonel is escorting her. To make matters worse, she has the audacity to wear mourning clothes to a gala. In their eyes, there is only one explanation: the woman has gone completely insane. Evelyn hears every whisper, but simply smiles, praising Gillis for making her the envy of the room. The man once seen as a lowly servant has suddenly become the dazzling center of attention. Now, the curtain rises on the Archduke's lineage, starting with Count Perez. The Count was a man of little significance until his daughter seduced the king himself. That illicit union bore fruit, and Victor was brought into this world. She ascended from a mere palace maid to the king's concubine, but in the Game of Thrones, nothing is ever that simple. Just as the Count believed his family's glory was secured, tragedy struck. His daughter, the royal concubine, perished in a sudden accident. The Paris family's foundation crumbled once more. Before tonight's festivities, Victor had a serious private discussion with his cousin, Lady Sonia. He urged her to abandon useless concerns about maintaining a pristine reputation. The era is shifting. Honor is dead. Only gold and absolute power remain. Weapons, armies, and brute strength are the only true assets when chaos descends. True power blocks adversity like a tidal wave. And Victor reveals he has found the perfect human shield to serve their ambitions. Gillis Black, our male lead, remains oblivious that he is a pawn on a chessboard. At this very moment, he bows, inviting Lady Sonia to the dance floor. The lady feigns coy hesitation before quickly accepting his hand. She beams with triumph, thanking him for granting her the honor of the first dance. Pride swells within her as the crowd declares them a perfect match. The nobility is convinced that Victor has selected Gillis to be his future brother-in-law. Sonia revels in these rumors. More than that, she savors the sensation of being held in Gillis's powerful embrace. He feels like an impenetrable fortress, capable of protecting her from anything. Her only reservation is his murky, unknown lineage. Yet, a sense of superiority washes over her. He ignored Evelyn Winter to choose her. That victory tastes sweeter than wine. Evelyn remains blissfully ignorant of these petty comparisons. She sits in solitary elegance, finding the entire grand ball dreadfully dull. She watches Gillis move, relieved he hasn't embarrassed himself. The sight unlocks a memory from the past, back when she first asked him to be her partner. He had been so timid, refusing repeatedly until she practically forced him onto the floor. He had been joyous then, following her lead like a loyal puppy. Evelyn observes him now. He executes every step she taught him perfectly, save for one crucial lesson. She had explicitly instructed him to gaze at his partner as if she were the most precious treasure on earth. Instead, his burning gaze is locked directly on Evelyn. Sonia is startled by his distraction, but a shadow approaches Evelyn before she can react. Victor looms over her, insisting on a dance. He drips with false pity, asking why she sits there in such pathetic isolation. He insinuates that no man is willing to approach her. Evelyn has no patience for his veiled insults and flatly refuses, claiming she is unfit to dance. She desires only peace, yet Victor continues to pester her. He leans in, advising her not to let such breathtaking beauty go to waste. Though she is a widow, her youth still blooms. He claims this dance is merely his benevolent way of offering comfort. Evelyn retorts that he has done enough comforting already, but Victor smiles darkly, promising that the real game is only just beginning. Back on the dance floor, Sonia stumbles. She fears Gilas's annoyance, but realizes he isn't even acknowledging her presence. She follows his line of sight to see him staring at another couple. Gilas's expression darkens as he spots the Archduke taking Evelyn's hand. They are clearly stepping into position, the music swells, the dance begins, and the true drama ignites. Victor casually inquires about her business affairs. When she replies that business is thriving thanks to him, he feigns shock. Evelyn reveals the grim truth because of his generous gift. Her secretary is currently fighting for his life in a hospital bed. Naturally, Victor denies any involvement with a smooth face. Evelyn's annoyance flares. She knows a snake when she sees one. She attempts to confront him about the stolen blueprints, but he ignores her words, spinning her around and forcing her to focus solely on their dance. He dismisses her instincts, casually suggesting she lose herself in the dance to clear her head, but Sonia is teetering on the brink of madness. Every time she glances at the colonel, his gaze is fixed elsewhere, locked onto Evelyn with an intensity that burns. It happens again, a silent betrayal. Gilas, sensing the toxicity in the air, attempts a polite retreat, claiming the music is deafening. Suddenly, a figure collides with them. It is the Archduke, offering a smooth apology for the clumsy mistake, but his eyes shoot a secret signal to his cousin. Sonia catches the hint instantly. She stages a dramatic slip, clutching her ankle as if in agony to sell the performance. She pleads for Gallus to carry her to Sanctuary. As the pair departs, a pair of sharp eyes watches from the shadows. Victor turns to Evelyn, explaining away his sister's exit as mere nerves, while slyly noting how perfectly they match on the floor. He feigns concern for her well-being, but Evelyn bites back, advising him to worry about his own unstable bloodline instead. The man is truly shameless. Despite his history of cruelty, he dares to suggest a truce or romantic alliance. Evelyn would be a fool to trust a viper like him. The music fades, and she breaks free. He tries to force her into another step, but she leaves him standing there, utterly ignored. Victor is helpless against her cold shoulder. Left alone, Evelyn is a chaotic mess of thoughts. She expected him to flaunt those stolen blueprints or demand a deal today, yet he chose a chilling silence. What is his endgame? Did he drag her to the floor just to stage a public humiliation? She envisions herself tripping, the crowd erupting in laughter at her expense. Evelyn has no idea what plot is in motion. She only knows she hates this throbbing ankle, but her internal complaints are cut short. She never expected to be discovered in her sanctuary. A male voice pierces the silence, calling her name. Meanwhile, Gillis has taken Sonia to a private room. He examines the injury, but the bone is intact perfectly fine. Innocent to her schemes, Gillis assumes it is merely a muscle spasm, never suspecting a lie. While he focuses on her health, Sonia focuses on him. She finally sees it, his striking face and the allure she missed before. He has a sculpted physique and unwavering loyalty. Desire flares, she finds him fascinating and decides then and there to make him hers. When Gillis suggests calling a doctor, panic strikes. How could Sonia allow that? If a medic arrives, her charade ends. She tries to leave the bed, but then a miracle of acting, she trips over absolutely nothing. This time, she collapses conveniently into Gillis's embrace, wrapping her arms around him. Dear Evelyn, your potential lover is being snatched away, but our girl is too busy dealing with the stranger who just appeared. He assumes she is an outcast like him, desperately begging for solidarity. Upstairs, Sonia is begging Gillis to maintain the embrace. She claims his arms are her only sanctuary from anxiety. Secretly, her hands wander, tracing his frame honestly. Who could blame her? She fixates on his necktie, purring praise as she asks who gifted it to him. She refuses to break the hold, waiting to be caught in the act. Back in the shadows, Evelyn finally recognizes the beggar. It is Count Theodore, dripping with bitterness as he curses the guests at the ball. He spits venom at the commoners, claiming they lack the soul of nobility. Evelyn warns him to silence his reckless tongue before enemies hear. The Count mistakes her caution for fear, and his rage only boils hotter. He dismisses the opinions of the lower class, wondering why Evelyn burdens herself with their thoughts. To him, they are insects. He turns his scorn on Evelyn, calling her situation pathetic. An injured woman forced to attend a ball, he sneers that the entire room has been mocking her behind their fans all night. Evelyn remains icy, untouched by his taunts. She advises him to vanish with whatever dignity he has left. Her dismissal triggers him. He insists on their noble superiority. refusing to bow to the standards of common filth. Done with his delusions, Evelyn turns to leave, but the man is not finished. Desperation makes him bold. Theodore grabs her. He demands she listen to a business proposal. He wants her money for an investment. Exhausted, Evelyn delivers a sharp slap across his face, silencing his shock with the truth. Everyone knows he squandered his fortune on gambling. Now he is nothing but a beggar in a nobleman's coat. Evelyn commands him to leave before he stains the nobility's honor any further. Theodore snaps, fury twisting his face. He grabs her again, hissing that they are reflections of each other, both destitute. He accuses her of hunting for a wealthy husband before her time runs out. But our queen refuses to be a victim. She drives a knee straight into his groin. She turns to escape, but the madman recovers too fast. He yanks her back by her hair, slamming her head into the ground, snarling that she has no right to look down on him from the gutter. Ellis remains completely oblivious to the nightmare unfolding nearby. He is still trapped by Sonia's side, unaware of the danger threatening Evelyn. A sensation of being watched pricks at his instincts. He flings the door open to catch the spy, but all he finds are two men acting like a couple, who immediately scramble away in panic. Seizing the opportunity, he tells Sonia he needs to fetch her a drink. It is a flimsy excuse, but it is his only chance to escape her suffocating presence. He rushes back to the ballroom, scanning the crowd desperately, but the woman he seeks is nowhere to be found. Elsewhere, Evelyn is fighting a losing battle. Theodore is forcing himself on her, his intentions vile. He knows she cannot scream. If a scandal breaks out, society will blame the woman, not the man. This twisted reality makes him bold, acting like a predator who has cornered his prey. However, Evelyn is not a damsel in need of saving. She is certain she can dispose of human trash like Theodore with her own two hands, but Theodore has the audacity to tell her she should be grateful. He claims he is merely offering her pleasure in private. His delusion runs so deep. He has actually convinced himself that she desires this assault. Just as he prepares to violate her, the door crashes open. Gila stands in the doorway, a silhouette of impending doom. Meanwhile, Sonia continues to wait patiently, oblivious to the storm brewing. She sits there nervously, wondering if Gilus will bring her alcohol to loosen the mood. Her mind runs wild with fantasies of them getting drunk and intimate in the secluded room. She can barely contain her excitement, but fate has a cruel disappointment in store for her. The fireworks begin to paint the night sky. She rushes to the window to watch the display, but the sight down below freezes the blood in her veins. Gilas is leaving the party, cradling a woman in his arms. A detail catches her eye. His necktie is intimately wrapped around the woman's injured ankle. Let us rewind time to see how this disaster unfolded. Minutes earlier, Gillis had kicked open the door, wine bottle in hand. The sight that greeted him was Theodore and Evelyn, tangled in a compromising position. Theodore shows zero shame. Instead, he flares up in anger that Gillis has interrupted them. He arrogantly commands the colonel to leave, claiming his presence is needed elsewhere. Gillis offers a calm, icy apology for disturbing their fun, but he does not move an inch. He refuses to leave. He casually remarks that he grew tired of dancing. With a dark smirk, he advises them to take their activities inside before they catch a cold. He even offers his own guest room for their use. Evelyn is infuriated by his indifference. The man simply sits down on the balcony and pours himself a drink, as if watching a play. She refuses to hide inside. With burning eyes, she demands that Gallus leave immediately, but he reminds her that this is his mansion. He claims he simply wishes to enjoy the night breeze. Evelyn is stunned. Gallus seems to be finding amusement in her humiliation. He states he is just enjoying himself, exactly as she appears to be doing. The accusation makes Evelyn snap. Rage clouds her judgment completely. If Gallus finds this so entertaining, she decides to give him a show. She yanks Theodore close and smashes her lips against his in a defiant kiss. But throughout the kiss, her eyes remain locked on Gillis, searching for a crack in his armor. She waits for jealousy, for anger, but the man shows absolutely nothing. He continues sipping his wine with terrifying calmness. Frustrated beyond measure, she turns her wrath on Theodore. She reaches into her purse and hurls coins at his chest, advising him to learn some technique. She mocks him ruthlessly. If he wants to be a kept man for a rich woman, he needs to improve his skills in bed. Right now, he's pathetic. She tells him the coins are payment for his meager entertainment. Theodore's ego shatters. Furious, he screams insults at her, his face twisting in humiliation. He snatches the wine bottle from Gilas's table and hurls it violently at Evelyn. As he lunges to attack her again, a hand suddenly clamps around his throat like a vice. He looks up, gasping for air, and meets the eyes of death itself. Gilas is no longer calm. His face is a mask of pure, murderous rage. The Count finally realizes his mistake. Terror grips him as he begs Gilas for mercy. Evelyn, sensing murder in the air, steps in to stop the bloodshed. This ball was carefully orchestrated by Gilas. As the host and master of the mansion, he cannot be the one to ruin it with a corpse. Gilas is reluctant to release the trash, but he obeys Evelyn's voice. He drops Theodore, who scrambles away, shaking like a leaf. The coward wants to be as far from Gilas as possible. Overcome by blind panic, Theodore makes a frantic decision. He jumps straight off the balcony. The party descends into chaos as guests scream for a doctor. The two responsible for this disaster look on with annoyance. Evelyn sighs that it is a mess, and for once, Gilas agrees completely. As the host, duty calls for him to go downstairs and manage the fallout. Evelyn urges him to go without her, insisting she can limp home on her own. But this time, Gilas is deaf to her protests. He sees her trembling legs and knows she cannot stand, let alone walk. Evelyn falls silent. People are scouring the mansion for Gilas, but his entire world has narrowed down to just her. He is focused solely on inspecting her injuries. She warns him that Victor is searching for him. He doesn't care. With gentle precision, he unbinds his necktie and wraps it securely around her swollen ankle. Ignoring every duty and every searching eye, he scoops her up into his arms. He carries her out of the mansion, leaving the chaos behind. Evelyn whispers for him not to do something he will regret, but he is done listening to reason. He commands her to be quiet and hold on. He has already arranged a carriage at the back gate. He orders the driver to depart unseen and assigns his personal guards to escort them. Evelyn worries he is being too reckless. If the Archduke discovers this breach of protocol, his fury will be catastrophic. Gilas cuts her off, telling her the consequences are none of her concern. In the quiet of the carriage, they both agree on one thing. This was the worst party in history. The carriage rolls away into the night. While the rest of the world celebrates under the fireworks, our couple sits in a heavy atmosphere of despair. Gilas slams his fist against the carriage wall in frustration. He is at a loss. Evelyn mirrors his turmoil, confused by the whirlwind of emotions and violence that just occurred. Everything has spiraled out of control. The Colonel's grand party has ended, but the gossip has only just begun. The guests cannot stop whispering about the accident. The word spreads like wildfire across the estate. Count Theodore has fallen from the balcony, and his leg, much like his pride, is completely broken. Whispers fill the streets like poison. Some claim the drink took him, while others point trembling fingers at the Colonel. But the darkest rumor of all, they say a mysterious lady was watching from the shadows when he fell. Meanwhile, Evelyn enjoys a peaceful afternoon of strategy on the chessboard. Suddenly, a visitor arrives unannounced, shattering her calm. The moment the guest steps into the light, the air leaves the room. Disbelief washes over them all. Standing before them is none other than Crown Prince Joshua. Oscar stares, unable to reconcile this man with the memory of a child. Oscar breaks down in tears. The small boy from his memories is gone, replaced by a 19-year-old man. 10 long years have vanished in the blink of an eye. Evelyn shoos the weeping Oscar away and invites the Royal Highness to sit. Oscar gladly surrenders his seat. He was being crushed in the chess match anyway. He is thrilled to find a new victim for Evelyn's brilliance. Joshua, however, hesitates. Nostalgia hits him. He remembers the days when Duke Rowan taught him the art of war on this very board. The Duke was an unshakable mountain, calm, determined, terrifyingly skilled. His mind was a fortress no one could breach. Elsewhere, Sonia is still haunted by the nightmare she witnessed at the banquet. Desperate for answers, she corners her cousin, Victor. Does the Colonel harbor secret affections for someone? Victor scoffs at the idea. He dismisses her fears as mere insecurity. Impossible, he claims. But Sonia trusts her own eyes. She drops the facade and reveals the poisonous rumors swirling through the town. The word on the street is damning. Evelyn Winter was on that balcony with Theodore, and her carriage vanished unseen into the night. Back at the mansion, the king falls, Joshua has lost the match. Oscar cries foul. He accuses Evelyn of weaponizing nostalgia to distract the prince and secure a cheap victory. Evelyn ignores the noise. A strategist never loses focus. The games are over. She demands the truth. Why is royalty here, unguarded and alone elsewhere? Gillis reveals a back mapped with the brutal scars of war. A message arrives from Scorpion. Without a second thought, the colonel gathers his assistant and moves out. But fate is cruel. The Archduke intercepts them at the gates, blocking their path. Victor's eyes are cold. He demands a conversation with our male lead, back with Evelyn. The truth finally spills out. The shadows of the past are alive. The Red Hawk Brotherhood, a rebel faction, is rising again. Oscar is confused. History says they were wiped out years ago, but history is wrong. The rebellion breathes. Joshua has seen the proof documents stamped with their blood-red seal. Gillis offers a stiff salute, masking his surprise. Victor waves away the protocol with a sharp gesture. A dark glance passes between them. They have business to discuss. Joshua, however, is trembling with anxiety. He has scoured the academy and the royal castle for answers. Yet, silence is the only response he receives. Today, he demands the truth. He remembers the stinging defeats of his childhood. He never lost to the Duke's mind, but to the woman beside him. Evelyn was the true grandmaster behind every move. She guided the pieces like a goddess of victory. Joshua could only watch in awe as she paved the path to triumph. He clung to her promise of a rematch. For years, he honed his skills for this exact moment. The board is set. Now, the real game begins. 4 spies blend into the bustling market. Evelyn, Oscar, Joshua, and Sherry infiltrate the streets to hunt down the secret society. Unfortunately, half the team seems to have forgotten the mission entirely. Oscar and Sherry abandon stealth immediately. They bolt off to play like excited children. Evelyn sighs, embarrassed by their antics. Joshua smiles, asking her to drop the heavy royal titles. Formalities would blow their cover. She uses his nickname, and the young prince turns a deep shade of crimson. Tension suffocates the room at Gillis's mansion. The Archduke is on the offensive. Gillis offers tea, but Victor strikes. Is this a gift from Evelyn? The joke lands flat. Victor reveals that Sonia is sniffing around their relationship, her suspicion growing by the second. Victor plays his hand. He knows Evelyn was with Theodore. The question is, how did she escape unseen? Gillis confesses. He was the one who smuggled her out. Victor's eyes narrow. Gillis claims it was to protect her reputation, but for the first time, the atmosphere shifts, leaving them in a deadlock. Joshua and Evelyn were attempting to blend into the bustling market crowd, but their cover was quickly blown. An elderly woman blocked their path, thrusting a basket of fresh fruit toward them with a warm smile. She showered Joshua with praise for his dashing good looks, but the atmosphere shifted when she winked, urging him to buy some sweet fruit for his lovely wife. Joshua's face turned beet red, and he stammered in panic to deny it. Evelyn, however, saved the day with ice-cold composure, laughing it off and explaining they were merely siblings. She didn't stop there. She haggled over the price with the sharp tongue of a seasoned commoner. Yet, as they walked away, her demeanor shifted back to that of a serious mentor, warning Joshua to stay sharp. She scolded him gently, explaining that paying attention to a seller's idle chatter was a rookie mistake. If he reacted so emotionally next time, it would raise suspicion and blow their cover instantly. Joshua gazed at her in total awe, realizing there was truly nothing this woman couldn't do. He confessed that he couldn't wait for the day his intellect finally matched hers. Evelyn tried to reassure him that he was already excellent, but Joshua shook his head. His heart was heavy with the shadow he couldn't escape. He was still comparing himself to Rowan. He recalled meeting Rowan when the man was just 19 years old. Even then, Rowan was a monster of talent, leaving Joshua struggling desperately just to claw his way to the top of his class. The entire continent already knew his name. They hailed him as the peerless genius of the next generation, a sun that outshone every other star in the sky. But for Joshua, being good wasn't enough. Standing in that colossal shadow, he felt small. No matter how hard he trained, it felt like he would never truly measure up to the legend. Meanwhile, the plot thickened elsewhere. Victor was desperate to uncover the truth behind why Gila had sent Evelyn away, and our male lead had finally pieced together the perfect justification. They needed to silence the rumors surrounding Evelyn completely. It was the only way to bait the trap and force the man playing dead to finally reveal himself. Victor froze in shock at the implication. It seemed Gillis hadn't just been sitting idle. He had actually figured out exactly where Rowan was hiding. Back in the market, Joshua and Evelyn's walk was interrupted again. A small girl with a basket of wilting flowers tugged at their sleeves, begging for just one sale to end her difficult day. Joshua didn't hesitate for a second. His noble heart shone through as he knelt down, promising to buy every single flower she had in her basket. Watching him, Evelyn felt a pang of deja vu, seeing the ghost of another person in his kindness. Softly, she told him to stop trying to be Rowan. There was no need to mimic a ghost. While Elas didn't know Rowan's exact coordinates, the pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. If they tracked him quietly, the truth would soon be within reach. The little girl, overjoyed with her empty basket, thanked them profusely and darted into a narrow alleyway. Evelyn's eyes followed the child, and that was when time seemed to stop. A figure stepped out to pat the girl's head, a silhouette Evelyn would recognize in any lifetime. It was him, her husband, Rowan. But was this truly the man they had been searching for? Or just a trick of the light? Who is this man really? Tell us your theories about Evelyn in the comments below. Until next time, ciao.